Hey guys, today we're checking out a huge 32-inch 1440p 144Hz FreeSync 2 curved HDR monitor that BenQ sent for a review. It is the EX3203R, so let's take a quick look at the specifications. We have a 31.5-inch 8-bit VA panel with 2560 by 1440 resolution. This is a high refresh monitor with 144 Hz, and it has FreeSync 2 and Display HDR 400 certifications. We have a 3000:1 contrast ratio and 400 nits brightness. It covers 90% of the DCI P3 color space, and the screen has a 1800R curvature. The box is absolutely massive and the monitor is well packed. The stand is already mounted, and in the box we find the monitor, the power supply, a power cord. We get a range of display cables to connect to HDMI, mini display port and USB Type-C. The monitor can be height adjusted and tilted forward and backwards. This monitor does not have the VESA mounting holes, but there is an optional adapter available. I really like the look and the design of the monitor. No RGB or other fancy gimmicks. It looks very professional. Also, everything is matte. The only thing that's glossy are the feet on the stand. At the back we have ports for the power supply. There's an audio output to connect to your speakers. We got two HDMI 2.0. There's one DisplayPort 1.4. We also have two USB 3, and there's also a USB-C port. Once you have all your cables connected, you can make things a little bit neater with the supplied cover. We will check out all the features, but let's go straight to the main purpose of this monitor. What is gaming like at 144 Hz with FreeSync 2? So I spent the weekend testing the EX3203R with both PC and consoles, and I could not be happier. We will go over all the features very soon, but yeah, what an experience. So this is my first time experiencing a high refresh monitor, and together with FreeSync 2, well, I'm blown away. This is the sort of upgrade I remember seeing when I first used a SSD. Everything is just so smooth and more responsive without any tearing. Now, I did test another FreeSync monitor a while ago, but that one had a very narrow range of only 48 to 60 Hz. This monitor, however, goes from 48 to 144 Hz. But it also supports what's called low frame rate compensation. This kicks in at a frame rate below 48 Hz, and this works great. I tested this in a range of games, and even at very low frame rates, there's no tearing going on. To double check that FreeSync is working, use a FPS counter. So in this case, we're getting 114 or so FPS, and then we're gonna access the built-in menu. So we go into System, and then we navigate to Information, and we will see here 113 Hz. So this confirms that FreeSync is working. The display runs at the same FPS or Hertz than the game. Let's check out how low frame rate compensation works. So here we are in Rise of the Tomb Raider. I maxed out all the details, so we're getting 33 FPS, and usually that means we would get tearing, but let's have a look in the menu. So we go into the menu, then on the left side here we go to System, and over here we go into Information, and we can now see that it's running at 66 Hz. So basically what low frame rate compensation does is it doubles the FPS, and by doing so is now within the FreeSync range, and everything is tear-free. But what about NVIDIA? Well, good news, the monitor works flawless. You need the latest driver and you need a modern GeForce card. I tested with a 1050 Ti. Then you go into the NVIDIA driver and enable G-Sync support. Initially, I had a few issues in games such as Far Cry 4. The screen would blank out for a few seconds randomly. So I found a workaround on Reddit, and you have to use the custom resolution utility and edit the FreeSync range. Out of the box, it's set to 24 to 144, so you have to edit that, change it to 48 to 144, and then everything works flawless, including low frame rate compensation. And I've tested this in a range of games, and yep, really happy. So it doesn't matter if you've got a NVIDIA GeForce or an AMD Radeon card, this monitor works with those two brands. A FreeSync 2 monitor has to meet certain criteria, such as a wider FreeSync range, low frame rate compensation, but also have low input latency, wide colors, and be at least HDR400 certified. I'm using a Radeon RX 570 for my testing, and FreeSync was enabled by default. You can also toggle it in the driver options or through the AMD overlay. In games, select the 1440p resolution, set the refresh rate to 144 Hz. My Xbox One S also picked up the monitor with variable refresh rate compatibility. So basically, if gaming is your thing, I think you will love this monitor. This smooth gaming experience, well, it can't really be shown in a YouTube video, but it is something you just have to experience with your own eyes. Now the panel is VA, so this means we're getting deep blacks because of the higher contrast ratio compared to TN and IPS panels. But also with VA panels, the colors can shift a little bit at an angle, so here the curved screen actually helps to keep things more uniform across the screen. Now I don't have any fancy color calibration equipment, but I believe I have a good eye for this sort of thing, and I found no reason to change the default settings in terms of colors. Now Computerbase recently reviewed this monitor and they found the colors and blacks to be very good. The panel is specified with a response time of 4 milliseconds. However, Computerbase measured only 2 milliseconds, and if you enable AMA in the settings, this improves to just 1 millisecond. They also looked at input lag, and here the BenQ monitor did really well, outpacing the other screens. Let's quickly talk about HDR. So the VESA Display HDR 400 certification, it is the lowest one available, but it's better than having no certification. And HDR, well, for me it's a little bit hard to judge because I've never experienced, for example, a Display HDR 1000 screen. So from my own testing, I found that it works well with my Xbox One S, for example. I bought this Blu-ray Earth 2 with 4K and HDR support, and it looks great. I would say it's a small improvement over watching it without HDR, and I also tested some games. For example, the Forza Horizon 4 demo has HDR support, and this one also looks very nice. On the PC, it's a bit of a mixed bag. In Strange Brigade, for example, there's an option inside the game to enable HDR, but to my eyes, it just looks a little bit off, and here I prefer playing without HDR. Dirt 3, on the other hand, also supports HDR. The monitor will display a little message showing you that HDR is active, and here HDR looks really nice. So on the PC, it seems to be a bit of a mixed bag, and you might have to tweak the settings a little bit, but at least on the console or when watching a Blu-ray, it worked pretty well. Now a quick note regarding power consumption and screen brightness. I measured the power consumption at 100% brightness. We're getting 57 watts, and you can lower the power consumption by lowering the brightness. If you dial it down all the way to 0, the monitor only consumes 17 watts. The monitor has a couple of features to look after your eyes. We have Brightness Intelligence Plus. There's a sensor at the front of the monitor which can detect the brightness in the room, but also the white balance and adjust accordingly. So this could be handy if you are in a room where the lighting condition changes quite a bit. The monitor also supports low blue light technology and is flicker-free, especially for content creators. Having a flicker-free monitor is awesome because no matter what shutter speed you're using, the monitor won't flicker. A feature I really like is picture-in-picture with your main image covering the entire screen, and then you've got a little preview for another input. You can also switch to picture by picture where you have two inputs side by side, and you can customize the entire thing, changing the size, for example, the position, and also swapping the inputs. I also like that each input can be individually set to auto detect or manual. So this is great if you've got a couple of devices connected to your monitor and you want to have some fine control over which one is being used and avoid it switching over to another device on its own. Something for our retro gamers. The monitor has display scaling built in, so you can scale the image to cover the full panel, to preserve the aspect ratio, or to do a 1:1 pixel mapped scaling. When connecting through HDMI, you can also set the color space between limited and full RGB. So guys, as you might have picked up, I'm really impressed with this monitor. The 144Hz high refresh rate together with FreeSync 2 support is a real game changer. Now, all my other monitors are 60Hz, so the difference in smoothness and responsiveness is huge. I played a bit of Far Cry 4 and it's impressive seeing no tearing while the frame rate can be all over the place and even dipping below 48Hz, keeping it tear-free thanks to the low frame rate compensation. I love the size of the screen and I think the 1440p resolution is a really good balance between getting extra detail but still decent performance on mainstream video cards. I also like the look of the monitor, no RGB or other silly gimmicks, it looks very professional, and the VA panel displays deep blacks, which I find is way more important than extreme brightness. I didn't have any issues and everything worked as expected, but of course there are always some little things that can be improved. I think if BenQ included a regular DisplayPort cable, that would be nice. And I also found that the USB ports are more for a permanent setup, like having a card reader connected, because trying to insert a flash drive from sitting in front of the monitor is quite tricky. So these ports would be more useful if they were on the side of the monitor. But these are really small things, and this monitor nails it where it really matters, which is gaming at 144Hz with FreeSync 2. As always guys, if I missed anything or you want me to test something with this monitor, leave a comment down below. I'll do my best to answer all your questions. I will see you with our weekly Friday video. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Give it a like and click on that notification bell. And I shall see you soon with another one.